So hello again, and thanks for the patience of sitting through the third panel of the day, but I'm sure it's going to be a very exciting one because we're going to talk about how to do all of what we've heard before, the implementation phase of such a moonshot. First of all, my name is Karen. I'm Managing Director of FARI, the AI Center for the Common Good located here in Brussels. I must admit, I myself am not an AI expert at all, probably the only one here in the room, but it has the advantage of making sure that whatever you explain, if I can understand it, a policymaker might be able to understand it. So let's make sure we phrase it in such a way that we can get the message across, because for the implementation phase, we're going to need to convince a lot of people, I'm sure. But I've been reading through your resumes, but in all honesty, I think if I'm going to recite them, I'm going to surely miss out on some important information that is relevant to the discussion of today. So first of all, I would invite each and every one of you to maybe just very quickly introduce yourself, and especially focusing on the background, the expertise that you're bringing into this panel conversation that is of relevance to the moonshot discussion. So let's start with you, Philipp.
Yeah, I think I was introduced already. So I'm a physicist by training, computer scientist scientifically, and joined DFKI in 2008 as scientific director at DFKI, member of the high-level expert group, where we try to lay some of the foundation on which we want to build here now.
I think that I have already this one. So, I am Francesco Ferro from Robotics. Here I am in representation of the president of euRobotics, Bart, that couldn't be here for some personal problem, let me say this way. He's recovering, so we wish him the best. And I'm an engineer, telecommunication engineer for Polytechnic of Torino, and I founded and I'm the managing director of one of the good company in service robotics in Europe, based in Barcelona.
Close to being a unicorn, I understood. So.
No, it's not my dream.
Thank you for being here. Sabine.
Okay, I'm Sabine Demey. Competency-wise, well, I'm an engineer. I have in computer science, PhD in robotics, so that already gives some links to the topics at hand. I've been working more than 20 years in industry, also getting AI really up and running in an industrial environment. But 4 years ago, I joined imec and the Flanders AI initiative. I'm now the director of the Flanders AI research program. How I can link it to this, and perhaps you can go into that later, perhaps the Flanders AI research program might be inspirational for an operational model on European scale. Who knows?
Looking forward to that. Thank you. Go ahead.
Leopold Summerer. I'm from ESA, the European Space Agency. I'm also a physicist by training. And what I think I could bring to the table is the organization model of ESA, which might provide some insights of what could work and maybe also what could not work. Looking forward to it.
Thank you. Bart.
Hey, I'm Bart Becks. Last years I've been mainly working a bit in the EU domain, so we built out Euractiv, which is a European media information company that just got acquired, but I'm still there for a couple of days, basically. And I'm also on the board of EIC, European Innovation Council, since 21, and that got continued till 26. And before that, I spent about 5 years in San Francisco and LA. And before that, of course, the highlight of my life, I've been leading a company named Skynet, which was born 25 years ago. It's now part of Proximus. And the funny part is that it was actually, the name was originally going to be something else, which was taken. And so after seeing the movie The Terminator, where Arnold Schwarzenegger has to protect the world against the AI virus called Skynet, we chose that as the name of our company. So since then, of course.
I never knew that. Thank you for sharing. Tilman, that leaves
Thank you. I'm Tilman Becker. I've been a researcher with DFKI, the German Research Center in Artificial Intelligence, for over 25 years. And since the beginning of 2020, I'm mainly working in Prague, setting up a RICAIP, which is the Research and Innovation Center on advanced industrial production. That's one of the biggest EU projects in the area of Industry 4.0 and applications of AI in that sector. And we're setting up very big research labs in Prague and Brno in the Czech Republic, and have Saarbrücken as an expert partner there with their own big labs. And we see lots of applications in this large research infrastructure.
Fantastic. So lots of ground to cover, and indeed different perspectives on building European organizations across different industries with the private sector and industry included. So this should be fun. I'm going to open the floor, but my invitation is really to indicate whenever you want to jump in. Let's have just as much as possible a natural conversation about this. But maybe let's start with you, Leopold, because I overheard you talking to Holger about the mysterious birth of ESA that might prove to be inspirational for this type of moonshot as well. And sometimes it's not, it doesn't go right from the first shot, if I understood well. So maybe you can give a little bit of background on that story.
Yes, actually, the story of ESA goes back to 59, when there was a visionary Italian physicist, Edoardo Armaidi, who published a paper in a French journal where he called for the establishment of a European organization for space on the model of CERN. And when I looked at the Moonshot paper that you put forward, I think Holger is going to project it at the end of this session. There are many commonalities. And of course, in 59, it was not the private companies that we were competing against, but Armaidi said, look, there is no doubt that space is the future. And if we don't do something now, in 20 years, we will be lost because the Americans and the Soviets are putting so much effort into this. We have to do something in Europe. And he argued that none of the European countries have the capacity on their own to pull this off. But his argument was, with twice or 3 times the budget of CERN, putting together about 10 countries, that was his assumption, you can create something that puts Europe on a central stage in space. Maybe not yet on equal footing within 10 years with the US and Russia, but having European independence and a real European role. And within a year, they created a preparatory conference in 1960, and then 2 organizations, one for satellites and one for launches. The one for satellites worked very well. The one for launches, where member states were very reluctant to Europeanize decision power, didn't work very well until in 75 they created what is now ESA and gave ESA real engineering decision power, and that led to the organization that we know now. And I think it is one of those success models in Europe where we really see, I mean, we are world leading in space science, we are world leading in navigation, we provide most of the data for the global climate models. We are unfortunately not that good as we should be with launches. There are some other areas also that where we are, human spaceflight, for example, was never one of the priorities, but it is still a model that I think shows when Europe pulls together, and it's painful because member states don't want to give up money, decision power, competence, but when they see it's really beneficial for all of them, it can work very well. And now we have fantastic integrated European industry, Airbus, Thales, OHB. We have a Europeanized space sector with many SMEs, thanks to an industrial policy that favors also the participation of smaller member states, so that not all goes to the electrons. So I think, yes, space is maybe a good model to look into that yes. Can give some lessons on what works and what works maybe less.
So
also.
I hear 2 sides in your answer. Is first of all that delegation of power turned out to be critical indeed to build that type of institution, but secondly also there must be some promise of return on investment for the member states to cough up the money and to allow for that power to transfer. Wonderful. Any other examples that you see where we could really learn from what worked so far across Europe?
I mean, certainly CERN, right? That's where I actually only learned about that. CERN was used as an example for ESA as well. And I mean, I mentioned it before, right? I mean, there is the hardware side of building rockets and satellites and stuff, but really at the end, what counts for me is really bringing the people together and right, getting member states to fund that, but then there must be people who actually want to drive that forward and run with that. They must give up some autonomy as well, right? Because as was discussed before, not everything will be funded through that, but there will be a selection process of what goes into that. I think one of the key things, and Johannes Helbig and myself, we worked out some of these things. So there's Andrea mentioned that, right? This now I'm missing the term.
In German.
So we need to be agile, right? To select what needs to be funded next. Portfolio management, sorry, I was missing that name. Right, so there needs to be an entity, right, that's probably will have people from industry, from research, that together make that decision, that evaluate what is going forward. People, the researchers need to engage in that process of what is the most promising next thing, right? I mean, in ESA, you cannot just send anything into space, but you have to agree on what are the next 2 or whatever many space satellites that you can launch, right? And there needs to be the infrastructure and the people, and there's a decision process, and people will lose. Some stuff will not get funded, right? And I think that's still something that the community is not adopted yet, right? This kind of thinking. So that will take time.
So getting rid of the choosing is losing paradigm is important. Go ahead, Leo.
Yeah, I think this is really central to what I would call a project organization. You are not, and there's one difference between what the Commission does, which is essentially giving grants, multi-year grants, important grants, and a project organization. And ESA as such is a project organization. We define ambitious projects and then we realize them. And that can take between 3-4 years up to 15 years. But that is, once it's decided, we want to launch LISA for measuring gravitational waves. Yes, we first have to have a LISA demonstration mission. And then 10 years later, we will get the key technologies at that level. We demonstrate it on ground, but everybody, once a decision is taken, this is the project, and this is the goal that we define together. We get funded, and it has also a huge advantage. Therefore, I would not call for losers. Once you get those who fund to discuss not should we fund that or that, and you have this situation where you have to fund a little bit everybody, but you get them to discuss should we do that mission or that mission, then you are in a much more positive dynamic. And you get member states saying, hey, we actually want to fund both of these fantastic projects because they lead to scientific return, they lead to industrial return, and this project builds up capacity that this other industry needs. So you get into a different mode of thinking about funding, which I think is beneficial.
Mm-hmm. Focusing on the end result of the mission, on the impact, yes. The why. Is that something that is feasible, setting goals 10, 15 years from now for AI? Or Sabine, if you want to comment otherwise?
Well, yeah, I wanted to throw in another example. It's not really from the far past. In fact, it's a still ongoing initiative. I want to refer to the CHIPS Act and the CHIPS Joint Undertaking. Of course, it still has to prove its success, although I think it's already very clear that it is triggering the interest from industry. It's even already also triggering investments from industry. So if we are able to take some of those lessons and approaches there, that might be very beneficial also. One of the things, for instance, is that they set a quite bold goal, saying 20% of the chips should be manufactured in Europe, which was at a certain time was like, whoa, this is perhaps a bit crazy or very bold. But for instance, let's do something also for AI and say, I don't know, 20% or another percentage of the generative AI or of the AI systems should be generated or revenue should come from Europe. To be discussed what the exact numbers are. Or another bold goal, imagine that you are cut off of American technology and we are fully on our own. Are we able to create within 6 months? Are we up and running again and are we fully proficient and can use all the generative models that we used to have from the States? So that might be some lessons learned from this example.
Yeah, so big goals and make them tangible and clear. I see you nodding, Tilman. Is that
Yes,
something that you want to comment on?
I'm fully in support of that. Because when you mention projects, you mean very big projects. This is not what we typically do in AI. We call them projects, but they're completely different beasts. What you're talking about is missions, and we don't have those, or at least very few of them. And we should have these big goals that then bring many groups together and make it clear to everyone that they're just contributing to something bigger, which is difficult, because if you really want to be the leader of your own research, that's a different story than being a contributor to a bigger mission. But I think that's what's really needed, agreement on what these big missions, these big goals could be. And that was my entry into the work of science in the Research Institute at DFKI, a very big project with 25 different groups working together for 8 years on Verbmobile, spoken language to spoken language translation, which wasn't existent in the 90s, but at the end of Verbmobile we had something up and running with very many different fields working together for the first time, and very hard to do, but very worthwhile. And that's something you need beyond just having a big institution and a lot of infrastructure there, a common goal, a big one.
Yeah, Francesco, I'm just going to
I
come to
think
you.
that in this panel we are all agreeing on everything. But so I'm sure nobody pay me in order to agree on that. But I think that the big elephant in the room here is that there are companies. So Aline before said to me, you are here like a representative of the only company, robotics company here. Where are the other companies? So we are probably starting the house from the ceiling, no? Sometimes. Oh, this is a little bit the intention. Then I understand that this is something that has to be pushed in a proper way from scientific point of view, and I completely agree on that. But in my opinion, we have to convince also the private sector, like CHIP. You mentioned the CHIP Act, that were also companies that are behind that have real needs. So in EURobotics, we made a fusion 15 years ago between Europe and Euron, that it was from scientific point of view and industry point of view. And we also have experience in order to have this kind of mixed, and sometimes it's difficult. What we need, even me, no? If I take it out the EURobotics hat and put the like company, the needs that I have to pay the employees in something that make profit, whatever, is completely different from scientific point of view. So sometimes it's difficult to mix these kind of things. And in my opinion, is exactly what it was mentioned in the previous panel, that is the work that we have to do together, not to just think on the best LLM ever for the Moonshot. We have to think what are the real needs that we have here in Europe for the company and for our human welfare in order to make the things better. And so this is exactly the purpose of all the association, in order to be together, listen. If we have different background, different opinion, different point of view, in order to mix together, in order to find a common goal, in order to create value. Company just needs value. So we have to create this value here in Europe for the European company. And the problem now is that sometimes all the companies that start to become a mid-cap, then others just purchase it. So we have also to protect these kind of things. I don't want to be US or Chinese, But I received every week 2 or 3 emails from venture capital in order to do that. So how we can retain this? Not only from crazy guys like me, but for all the for European community. So this is the big point. I don't have the answer.
Yes, I think we are in a very different situation here in Europe than in other countries, right? So I don't think we can start an industry initiative right now, right? The industry is just not, it's much smaller, many smaller companies, and trying to get all of those companies behind such an idea to fund that is just not going to work, right? I mean, it's very clear. I fully agree with you there. So I think what we need to do is to start on the public side, right? To get, to also show that there is light at the end of the tunnel, right? As you say, this will be a difficult process, a long process maybe, but we need to be able to see, yes, this is something that can be pulled off, and I think the discussion with Alex Voss and was really, I mean, he saw some ways forward of how we can do the next step. So, because before we see that light at the end of the tunnel, it's very difficult to motivate people, right? But as soon as there is a stronger public investment in this area, I think there is a lot of industry that is interested. Right now, so we just founded the CERTAIN, the Center for European Research on Trusted AI. The European industry, German industries, what we mostly deal with, they want certified AI, right? Ideally certified generative AI, because they have the problem of selling that to their customers, and there's a lot of distrust right now. So they see that need, and they're starting to certify with very simple methods, like say, not what we need. And so there is a need from the company side, but getting them together, that's not going to work. And then I really want to point out what Arlene said earlier, right? We also need to be bold in not just saying, oh, we do the large language model that the US is already doing, but really target something challenging, right? The 3D world out there, the motion, forces, physics, lots of other aspects that where it actually turns out really interesting. The computer graphics community in Europe is one of the best in the world, right? They have dealt with that problem. I'm part of that, so I'm biased a little bit here. I should, for transparency reasons, I should mention that. We've dealing with that simulation modeling the world for many years, but we haven't done it in a way that it is amendable to generative AI yet, right? But bringing those things together would, I think, be a big step forward to then bring also AI and robotics together. So I think there's really great things we can achieve, but we need to carefully bring these different pieces together, right? Initial investment from the public side, but then also get the industry involved in that, because only the public funding without clearly showing the industry interest in that will not work either. Right?
Thank you indeed, and I know, Bart, that you have quite some experience from the different perspectives in academia, in industry obviously as well, and now more recently in gathering stakeholders across Europe behind the common vision. What do you see as the key critical success factors for gathering these different communities behind the joint missions that we're hopefully going to set out?
I believe that.
Is it on?
This is not on.
Is it on? Not on?
Try to.
Maybe the battery.
Yeah, might be, but this one
Another
works.
big problem, batteries.
I think a model that works really well to reflect it or to give us perspective is what they usually call the MIT ecosystem model, where you bring together entrepreneurs, venture capital, corporates, policy or government, and research, right? So you need all 5 of them at the same time. I believe that per region, it'll be other ones driving it. I was just looking up because I heard we need 100 billion. What's the current cash position of some of the US companies that are relatively active in AI? Microsoft just announced that they have over 100 billion in cash. Apple, we know it's more. in cash. So that's not even investment capacity, it's cash sitting on the bank waiting to be used. And so if you take all three relatively big ones that are preparing stuff in AI, Apple, Amazon, and Microsoft, they all have all three already have an excess cash position of 80 billion. We're talking about doing the same thing. We have no European industrial companies that have that amount of cash available. I'm not even talking about the distribution opportunity of scaling or bringing to market the solutions. It's just having the money to create that kind of ecosystem. So I believe that from a European perspective, the institutional capital will be required to set that in motion. We've been testing from EIC, so EIC, European Innovation Council. For those who don't know, it's kind of a program where the budget there is about 10 billion, and we try to fund three things. Initial research, transition to company, but also taking equity investments into companies. So finally, we're also blending a bit of it to do a scale-up capital plus keep on investing into the IP. But what I like a lot is that we're now making investments. It's limited to about 20 million, but still, it's an amount that can be investment where we can take equity participations in companies. It should quickly go up to 50 million and ideally quickly go up to 100 million, but the key element will be setting up what in the US, what everybody always talked when I was in San Francisco, it was always, what's the funding, what's the design of the funding? Meaning that the moment that a company gets launched, there's an early investor who gets in, and if you hit your deadlines, in 18 months, they'll lead a round and they'll find the other investors. In Europe, what often happens is that each round, the entrepreneur needs to, I always say, take 6 months off to take a new round of funding because it's different kind of category of investors. That's one of the things that I think Europe should do. It is be part of the initial funding rounds, if it's research via grants or initial setup or initial scaling, but be an active participant in each of the rounds. And what we now call crowding in is essential in it, meaning that European policy or the EU should then team up with local institutional or regional capital and private capital. At EIC, we're now at the level of ×4. So every euro invested creates 4 in total. In France, it works already incredibly well. You have BPI, who basically co-founds all deep tech rounds. Sweden is another great example. Germany on the industrial fund is doing really interesting things. It's all fairly scattered. But combining all that, so accelerating the funding rounds by designing it and telling an entrepreneur, if you hit this in 10 years, if that's your moonshot, that's how you can get there. Yeah. So it's increasing the ambition and capital, but most important is the timing. Decreasing the timing between rounds. We just lose, every round we lose something. If you look at research, a lot of people here are involved on the research side. We once worked together on the iMind, which is now part of imec. In research, Europe is comparable to most of. Then 95%, the last study was that 95% of patents are unused. Okay, that's a bit unfortunate, but it's not so different around the world. In transitioning to companies, typically Europe is 30% lower than US and now Asia. And then if you look at scale-ups, it's another 30%. So it's not so much on research or talent, it's on the next steps. So by accelerating and designing that different, I think that could make a really big difference. And if there's not one of the 5 elements that I just mentioned, I think all of the 5 elements of the ecosystem should progress at the same time. And there's ways of doing it, I believe. Yeah.
And that might create some, I'm going to do it this way, and that might create some return on investment for the member states to cough up the initial investment money, obviously. I saw you nodding a lot again. Is this something that you would like to comment on? No? Okay, just to be sure. Any other critical success factors that we see if we move into the implementation phase? What needs to happen?
If I can add something, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Go.
you first.
Come on, you can.
Ladies first.
Okay.
You can say.
Yeah, if you want to know what we critically need, I think we should go back to what is our goal.
Yes.
And base, you can't talk about what you need before you know what you need to do. But okay, we'll have to do that. Secondly, we also have to think not only about what, but of the properties of this infrastructure and the things that we need. We already touched upon trustworthiness. I want to draw in a few other, let's say, requirements. Inclusiveness, so that we make systems that are affordable and accessible to a large amount of people and companies. If we want to be successful in Europe, we have to have a widespread adoption and we have to make it available for a lot of people. Another thing we should go for is energy efficiency, sustainability. If we want to be successful in Europe, we will have to make systems and infrastructure that are sustainable. So property-wise, these are a few things we should say. Then what we then really need, I think the usual things that we all talk about, data and compute infrastructures and the models. I would like to stress that here we are talking about, we talk about the end. We need all three of them and we need to work on them together. It's not working on HPC and HPC even for AI, and it's not only working about data and data spaces, but we can only make it successful if you have an integrated approach and what we call at imec and also in Flanders AI research, a co-optimized approach of your software, your AI models and your infrastructure, your hardware, and your data spaces, and work them all work together. So not that.
Makes a lot of sense. Is that something you want to comment on?
Yes, I want just to mention that sometimes we forgot the embodiment. So we have to just, because speaking about the AI, we just sometimes forgot that there's also a physical world where we need to interact. And roboticists, we used to have this because we have robots in the real world doing things. Yeah. We need these tools in order to make better use cases, so to solve more needs. But don't forget this, that has to be something real. Because I remember in ERF some years ago that one of DeMey, the brilliant keynote speaker, making a presentation saying that roboticists, you are done in 3 years, generative AI already will conquer the world, so no model anymore, so we will just do everything. We are still waiting. And actually, I will love to use it, but it's not that. So thanks to AI Act, we just see that there are some critical stuff that we have still, and I hope forever, trust on mathematical models. But for all the others, AI will be very, very, very good in order to make more agile and faster all the development that we are doing. So I remember when I used my first robot, in order to just start up the robot, we need 10 engineers programming in order to make these kind of things happening. Mm-hmm. Nowadays, you just turn on and the robot can do the things that we programmed it to do. Mm-hmm. Will be wonderful that you just turn on and the robot also can do something that is not critical thanks to AI. So it will be AI Act GPT. This is the dream.
A nice list of critical success factors. It will be quite ambitious to get all of that together. Is there anything we can build on today? Do you see good practices, specifically in the field of AI and robotics, obviously, now? Do you see good practices that, can we hit the ground running? Or do we really have to start building from scratch?
Well, first of all, I think this was a great, or is still a great meeting, great day. I've talked to so many people with so many great ideas and contacts here. I think we made a really big step forward. There were good ideas with Axel Voss and others, I mentioned that. So there is a clear path forward, but there is a lot of work that we need to do. We need to, in parallel, work on what does that thing actually look like, right? Because at this point it's still, as Andrea also said, a fairly high-level sketch. But at the same time, we need to have some idea that we actually can pull that off, because otherwise there's no little motivation to actually do the first part. So what I would encourage everyone here in the room and your friends and family is really to start thinking about that, and let's form some working group, whatever, really find the right people to drive this forward, both on the policy side, but also on the technical side. And I mean, I think with Claire, we have some framework where we can organize all of that.
The question I'm asking myself, and I'm not from the AI community as such, is something that was in the Moonshot paper, is that the argument that you need an organization that pulls it off. And very few of you have actually argued for an organization that pulls this off. Therefore, my question to you is, do we need in Europe an organization that is tasked to pull this off and group all the different societies, associations, non-profit, profits, and pull these things together? Do we need this, according to you?
Feel free.
Can I answer this by going a slight detour? By first answering the question, can we hit the ground running? Yes, from experience, we have all these many great research institutions that are all ready to contribute to something, and that's what I experienced in the Czech Republic at CTU, the Czech Technical University. There's the big institute with an initial testbed, and that was just enlarged. So. And then in Brno, another site which collaborates, and that kind of distribution is something that's endemic in Europe. So my big push would be, because I think the distributed part is advocated for, is to make sure that Moonshot has a central hub where people actually meet, another type of embodiment to really have not just the institution, but a center where people meet and talk over coffee and fight over the photocopier and then get the Nobel Prize. You've heard that story. That's essential. And I think along with that goes, when the goals are big, there's probably a need for such an organization. Yes. Because the bigger goals, once you have these very large missions, need to be administrated somewhere.
Well, if I may, coming back to the space sector, we have something like a few thousand people in ESA working, but there are, I think now it's 40, 50,000 people working in space in Europe. The large part in Toulouse, Bremen, Bavaria, Turin. But then they are scattered around Europe. But there is, of course, a central hub, which is now in Holland, which is ESTEC. There's a political hub, which is Paris. There is the hub of all the astronauts, which is in Cologne. There is. So I think this can work. And it's not meaning everybody has to be together in one area, but you need to have somebody that provides a certain leadership in what are the projects, what are the missions that we all work together. And then there could be various combinations of groups and countries coming together to work together on some project A, B, C, and it doesn't need to be homogeneous, but I at the moment, I don't see anybody in Europe that can formulate and then finance a 5, 10, 15-year vision on AI. And my understanding of this paper was that this was the intention to create, but maybe I'm wrong.
Holger, I think that's going to nicely transition to you, because I've been getting the signal to wrap up over here because we're running out of time. But I think indeed, I hope we provided you with lots of inspiration to wrap the day up and to continue, surely, the discussion during the drinks later on. So thank you very much to our esteemed panelists and to you for your attention.
It's great to have all of you here, right? And I think what we've heard throughout this half day that we spent together, from my perspective, are two things. The first is that in this diversity that we bring together here, there's enormous strength and energy, right? And I think people can feel this. And it's always easy to, look at others from a distance and say, well, I think I can do this better, and I think I can do that better, and maybe I can do these things on my own. But once you start milling around in a room like this, I think we get the sense that together we can achieve so much more. And of course, still we go away and do our own thing too, right? But these two things, they can work together really well. And I believe this is also where some of the statements in this last implementation panel led us. This is where 6 years ago when we were in this room, actually 5 years and 11 months, where we started. Because, you know, different from what many people think, the clear vision is not to put it all together and put it under central control and everybody into one place. The clear vision from the very beginning was 3 things, right? Other than what you see on there, excellence across all of AI for all of Europe with a human-centered focus. By the way, I can't resist but note, back then there was a lot of discussion about this, not so much in this room, but with others in the community. There were people who say, we don't need all of AI, all we need is deep learning, and that's it. And there were people who said, well, all of Europe, yeah, it's nice if everybody can come along, but really, if France and Germany and maybe 1, 2 other countries were already strong do this, back then the UK was still in, now unfortunately not, right? Then maybe that's enough and the other come along for the ride. And then there were people who said human-centered focus, well, that's just one perspective. How about a machine-centered focus or no focus on particular stakeholders whatsoever? And there were big discussions. I do notice that all these discussions have quieted down in Europe. I think every single organization that does AI and AI-related things in Europe now believes that we need more than just deep learning. We need different things, right? We need really all of Europe. There are great people in the smaller countries that do fantastic things. I mean, I'm just thinking of the Nordic countries because of where we are today. We know that there is great AI research going on in Sweden, in Norway, in Denmark. Recently, I heard about, you know, a project from Frederick that includes researchers from Iceland. How great is that, right? Who would have thought that AI researchers from Iceland will make a substantial contribution? I think, Frederick, unless I misunderstood you, they do, right? So, and the human-centered focus, I haven't met anybody for years who said, hey, what about that? Do we really need that, right? So in that sense, those 3 things are now a given, which is great. But there were 3 other things that the clear vision called for. It was a network distributed, fully distributed across all of Europe, not just the EU, right? Which has become a lot more important since sadly the UK decided to sort of take a little detour. That's at least what I hope, that it's just the detour that eventually will get back to where we all should be. Right, so fully distributed, and then there was a second level regional hubs. I heard Roberto Viola talk about the AI factories the other day at a beautiful event run by SEPS. And I was thinking, that's exactly what we talked about in 2018. And actually, you don't need to take my word for it. You can go to the clear vision, which has stood unchanged since then, and you find it right in there. So this is great. And then it said, indeed, there is a third element, which is sort of something central that brings it together. And I think we heard Leopold say the one thing that brings it together is it doesn't have to be one house in one place. There is a bit of leeway for interpreting that, but it needs to be sort of one space where people come together and make decisions and deliberate and, you know, make the hard decisions. And this is not easy, this is hard, right? So the sense that I'm taking away from today, and hopefully you do too, is that we need to make more progress on all these 3 levels, right? The network is there, it's doing great stuff. People like Arlene are leading parts of it, great. But we've heard Arlene and others say, that network can absorb a lot more support and translate it into great science and great innovation and the basis for an even greater economy, right? That network has the capacity to do more, and it has, I think, the wish to do more, doesn't it? The AI factories, great that the Commission came around doing something like this, but I think it's going to be a bit of a path to make them a success, and I really sincerely hope that we won't end up with some sort of a scaled-down version where there is a feeling that, you know, giving something funding for 5 years to the tune of 10 million each, it's going to make a difference. I'm looking at you now and I'm telling you, I don't think that would make a difference at all. I mean, it would produce a few more great PhD students and a few more jobs, and that wouldn't be exactly a waste of money, but it would be a horrendous waste of an opportunity to do something truly significant, right? So I think that opportunity is there. It's great that in the Commission there seems to be a sense that it's there. Let's hope that this time they execute boldly. Let's hope that they also take the next step in the networks and fix that, right? In the next framework program, for example, maybe even before. And let's hope that they think carefully about the tremendous motivating power that a joint big mission can have, right? And this is where I would say competition is great, but we shouldn't be competing with each other. We should be competing with, you know, the AI companies in the States, and this can be friendly competition, right? But we should compete with them. We should do our own things that are just as great and greater and that work just as well for us and better, because we need that, right? So wonderful to get the sense from those who have contributed today, also to the informal discussions I at least overheard, probably many of you too during the breaks, to drive us in this direction. That's what we need to do, right? And as Philipp said, we're well set up to do these things. We have CLARE, we have euRobotics, we have ADRA, we have other forums. Now is the time to inject the idea that we want to do something bold and ambitious together, something that will require compromise and will require us to, you know, maybe not just go our own way, but say, yeah, so in order I can do it with you and you and you, I'm going to scale back my own personal ambition a tiny bit. That's what we need to do. And then we need to go and do this thing and come out better the other end. And I think we have a great chance of doing that. That said, thank you all once again for being here, for being part of this first steps towards a joint mission. My last thanks goes to all of those who have organized this. And I don't mean the organization, I've thanked them already. Although I want to say one more time, it was timely and great that EURI and SEPS decided relatively shortly before the event, when we were already fully committed, to endorse that proposal and be part of this amazing movement. This is great. I know that they will bring additional aspects and additional capacity and capabilities to that. That will be absolutely crucial. Also wonderful to see continued support from ESA for this. I know that CERN colleagues wanted to be here and then unfortunately had a high-level management meeting during the same day, so they couldn't, but they sent us their greetings. But I also and especially want to thank the folks that did things here on the ground. And particularly I want to thank Alexa and Ida and Hina, who are all three back there, who really worked extremely hard to And one of the things they pulled off that I think we particularly enjoy is the catering. I'm not sure about you, but I was very pleased with that so far. And looking at our friends over there, they're smiling. I think they have other great things for us right now, at least for the next 65 minutes or so, right? So you guys are ready for the onslaught onto the drinks. So thanks to you as well. And thank you to all of you for being here. There is video from the whole thing. We will try to pull out some of the maybe more memorable moments of it and distribute this, so you will probably hear and see a little bit more of that should you be interested in this. But now, please enjoy the remaining time that we have here in Norway House. Talk to each other. Let's share our energy and enthusiasm for the time that remains here and move this forward together. Thank you very much.